Scrawny with the Skinny. You're watching HLTV Fantasyland. Before we talk about ESL Pro League Season 17 playoffs, I want to reflect on Group D. I named this team the Ghouls. Probably should have called them the Zombies. Every single one of these players walked into this group looking dead. At the end of the first day, I was bottom 95%. Luckily for me, Electronic and Bit pulled through. All right, they finished as Navi's second and third highest rated players, and because of that, I ended 46%. All right, that's 4 points in my back pocket. I'll take it. Now, the big disappointment, obviously, Team Liquid, right? I mean, another incredibly slow start, losing to teams they have no business losing to, and even my specific draft didn't go well. Naf would have been better replaced by Yakinder, Elige would have been better replaced by Osi, so with Liquid, I was simply wrong. But the real pick that sunk this ship, Glaive. I was all jacked up on Zywoo juice. I had the option between three players. I had Glaive, Zippix, and Snappy. And let this draft be the reminder that one player can make a world of difference. Had I taken Snappy instead of Glaive, this roster would have finished top 15%. Stay sharp, kids. Stay sharp. Now, I want to reflect back on Blast Premier Spring Groups because look who I drafted there. Oh, double Navi, double Liquid. Got to learn your lessons. Sometimes look back. Why did you get 0 points? Well, sometimes it's because you drafted fours. Oh no, turns out they're great now. Sometimes you don't put stock in previous results. Sometimes you do. The moral of the story is don't think too much about it. Take your risks when it feels right. You gotta roll the dice. Sometimes it's going to pay off if you take the right risk at the right time. That's fantasy. It's an entire season long, all right? Don't beat yourself up for one bad result. Now, let's go through the brackets for the playoffs, baby. Great playoffs format, I have to add, right? Single elimination, 2 rounds of playoffs prior to the quarterfinals, no second chances, tons of teams still left. I feel like there's a lot of upset potential here and there and a lot of cool stories that could come out of this season of Pro League. But in the first round, I think it's pretty clear. Navi over 0-0 Nation. In Fnatic versus Furia, I think this is the closest opening game, and I think that Ancient will play a pretty important role in this series. So I'm going to give it to Fnatic between the two, and I think that we're getting towards the end of Art's era. With Liquid versus Pain, props to the Brazilians. 3 teams made it out of groups. That's cool and all, but Team Liquid are powering up, and Pain don't have what it takes to hold them back. G2 versus Movistar, similar situation. Improving as of late, but G2 simply better. Now, Outsiders versus Navi, I think this is the first really interesting matchup that could go either way. And I think that the map pool between these two teams has a lot of parallel. And for that reason, when you think about the grindy games that Outsiders outputs, I'm thinking 30-round matches, overtimes. This is going to be grueling, and I think it's going to be close, and I think it could very well go either way. But as it stands at the moment, Outsiders are my favorites for this one. I think that FaZe just dismantled Fnatic pretty quickly. I'm not all too impressed by Fnatic at the moment. I think FaZe have what it takes. Yes, okay, they lost to Vitality. They let that crazy comeback on Anubis happen. But other than that, FaZe still almost kept themselves in that second map within the series and looked good elsewhere anyways. MOUZ versus Liquid. Now, this game gets interesting. Yes, Liquid are starting to activate, get online, but I think it's coming in too late. I think that Frozen looks like a world-class player at the moment. I think that Torzi's opping is returning to form as it was when he first joined MOUZ prior to the other NXT boys. I think that Dexter's play looks better than ever, and I think that JDC is starting to catch up to Exertion in the rifling role, which all comes together to elevate MOUZ's skill floor to a point where they can take down Team Liquid because we are not seeing the best Liquid at the moment. If we got the best of both teams at the same time, I do think Liquid win, but I don't think we're getting the best of Liquid right now. I have MOUZ going to quarterfinals. ENCE versus G2. G2 are shooting for the title. There is nothing other than that they want at this moment. Nertz, he looked like the real deal, but he has never played a team or players as good as this, and I don't think that ENCE are going to stop G2 from making the run towards quarters. Excuse me. No cuts, no edits. Quarterfinals. All right. Heroic, Best team play out there, defining the meta. Everybody wants to be like them except for Outsiders, right? This is the total contrast in style. And unfortunately for Outsiders, I think that Heroic want this win more than anybody else. And I think that they're working harder than anybody else. And so I put Heroic into the semis. Fours, awesome run, okay? Hats off, awesome run. But if you had told me they started at playoffs round 1, I would tell you that their absolute cap is quarterfinals. The fact that they start there, I think, is just a sad reality that we're not going to get to see much more of them. And I believe that FaZe actually have a pretty smooth run from playoff round 2 into the semis. I'm actually most confident in FaZe getting to semifinals out of all these other teams. Cloud9 Mouse. Cloud9 Mouse. I don't want you to remember the Cloud9 that beat G2 just as of late. I want you to remember the Cloud9 that completely flopped in Katowice, because it is the same Cloud9. All right? Pound for pound, Shiro has Torzi covered every single day of the year. But in the in-game leadership department, I'm putting my bets on Dexter over Nafany. I think Frozen can go tit for tat when it comes to him versus Axile. And again, with the JDC exertion combo, you get me? Mouse best Cloud9. That's going to be an upset just like it was in Rio. Another quarterfinal choke for Cloud9. You heard it here first. Then we get the Vitality versus G2 game. All right? Vitality. ZywOo, highest rated player out of all of the group stage so far at Pro League. The fact that they came back versus FaZe on Anubis is unbelievable. And you have Jax, a sudden stand-in who is playing better Counter-Strike than he has ever played before, being properly utilized by a guy like Apex, who has as of late started to survive in mid-round moments. We are talking about a Vitality that is looking at the Blast Paris Major as theirs for the taking, right? That's what they have to tell themselves when they get out of bed every single day. And when they get out of bed versus G2 in this quarterfinals, there's a very real chance that G2 just completely shut them down. There's a very real chance. But I'm not putting my bets on that chance. I'm taking Vitality over G2. G2 are wounded at the moment. They've had a good long period of time off since that loss to Cloud9 and the return here to the playoffs. And I think that Vitality are simply in a honeymoon period that's going to shock the world and get the better of G2. All right? Then we have Heroic versus FaZe in the semis. Heroic versus FaZe. Heroic. Mouse versus Vitality. Ooh, I love you, Mouse, but Vitality's got this. I'm talking Heroic Vitality Grand Finals. Okay, listen, we're already 12 predictions deep. At this point, any crazy shit can happen. And that's why I'm hedging my bets on the Heroic versus Vitality Grand Finals for this season of Pro League. The back-to-back finals appearance for Vitality, but another trophy lift for Heroic. That's the way I see this bracket going. Heroic wins the event. Vitality upset versus G2. FaZe have an easy run, and Mouse get a couple upsets in as well. Liquid falls short. Na'Vi falls short. Outsiders still kind of stuck in the middle. Remember all these things as we get into the draft. So, Heroic win. That's what we're working on. And when Heroic win, and when Heroic play in playoffs, there's one guy on this team who stands out to me more than anybody else, and that's straight up Jabby. All right, in the big games, Jabby comes through like nobody else. When we look at the price tags for the other Heroic players, I'm leaning towards Cadian, 214. We can start to get into the op role. It's not too crazy. It's not like some of the other stars, right? But that's not what Heroic do. Heroic, it's about all the individuals, and they all need to come together for this win to happen. And if they're all going to come together, then I think that the bottom of Heroic also needs to be stepping up a notch. And I'm going all in on this draft. So I'm taking Shush. All right. Even though the other three players on Heroic are usually better on their best days, I like Shush in tight games. When the going gets tough, that's when Shush gets going. So with Jabby and Shush, I'm taking two Heroic players. Straight up. Also, if we look at the statistics for Heroic players in the last 3 months, Jabby is very clearly at the tippity top, all right? Stown can actually get absent in some of the bigger games. And again, yes, Shush is at the bottom, but this is still a team that is solid and very close together. Then, Who could we possibly draft? Well, I told you that G2 is going to make a decent run. I think that they've got very easy opening games, right? For that reason, I think that the G2 players will have a great chance at farming some points for fantasy early on. And worst case, if they beat Vitality, like there is definitely a chance, then I can still have a G2 player going on towards the playoffs. Let's just say I'm completely wrong about the bottom side of the bracket and G2 make that run all the way. Let's just recognize the fact that all 5 players on G2 are currently in the top 8 most picked players for this fantasy draft. If you don't have any stock in G2 and it goes well for them, you're getting left in the dust. So I will pick the guy who, much like Jabby, steps up in playoffs. The guy who exceeds expectations time and time again. The guy who, in the last 3 months, is actually the 3rd highest rated and is just behind Monacy and Nico. I'm talking about JKS, the Aussie, the savage, baby. Jabby, JKS, a lot of similarities between the two. And Shush again, silently doing his thing in the background. All right, that leaves us $384,000. We are only $16,000 over the 200K average. So we're doing good with silver players. And that's going to be the gist of this entire draft. All right, we're not going heavy handed. I scroll down, I look at FaZe. Obviously, I predict Vitality to make a deep run. Outsiders, I love Jamin Flit, but we're stopping back at Vitalite. All right. It is currently 4:17 a.m. Eastern Time. I want this video out by the time y'all wake up, European or North American. The creative juices are flowing. I'm in the flow state, in fact. I'm so in the flow state that there's only one other human being who understands what that feels like. And that one other human being is the guy who has exceeded all expectations in the last month of Counter-Strike, who has blown your socks off before you could ever see it coming. And I am talking about La Finesse. Jax, La Finesse, mon ami. Look at these stats. 1.26 rating as a stand-in. Everybody on Vitality in the green with this team. These are their 6 map stats that they have gotten in at Pro League so far. That's a game versus OG and a game versus FaZe. The OG was a blowout. The FaZe game was the best comeback Vitality have ever made. Their mental is in the best place it's ever been. They believe in Jax and his role, and he believes in their system. And this synergy that comes together is going to be the most beautiful thing you have ever seen. I told you at the start of this episode that you take the risks at the right time, and this is the time. This is the risk. We're doing it. Jax, La Finesse. Okay? This leaves us $180,000. With $180,000, we get into a situation where we have to make the right bronze pick again. We've got Apex, we've got Hooksy, we've got Kerrigan, Kicker, Dexter, Nafany, Snappy, all the same usual suspects. But there's one player here who I think has an easier run than anybody else, and that is my man, Finn Kerrigan. $180,000 puts us at that perfect $0 left budget. And if we take a quick glance at the FaZe clan, take a note that in the last 3 months, Kerrigan actually has a 1.04. 1.04 for Kerrigan is excellent. And his stats are a little inflated at Pro League at the moment because they did get to open up versus some easier opposition. But even in their last match versus Vitality, he's finishing as, I think, the 2nd highest rated player. Kerrigan is playing above his average, just like Apex is, just like Jax is. He is our 5th and final piece. These are the Berserkers. The Berserkers are about to knock your socks off. Multi-fragger for Jabby, leader for Shush because a win is a win, support for JKS because he tops it out, headshot machine for La Finesse, and defender for Kerrigan because it's basically the same as Noob, but we believe in our pieces. This is it. These are the Berserkers. This is the key to getting top 7%. Yeah, top 7% at ESL Pro League playoffs. That's what I'm predicting. Of course, I told you guys that nowadays I also show you other drafts. I have one other draft for you. Okay? The only other draft. And the only other draft today is the exact same goddamn draft. I told you, berserkers.